EMR, computerized provider order entry, refill prescriptions in PrognoCIS. In this video, we're going to look at how to do a prescription refill directly in PrognoCIS. The SureScript electronic refills will be handled in a separate video. Now, when it comes to creating a refill, user permissions do apply. As for creating the refill, you simply select the patient. Now, it does not require that the patient have existing appointments or even an encounter. You can do this directly under the CPOE refill option, which invokes the patient search. A refill request encounter will be auto-generated as well as automatically closed, provided the workflow is not interrupted. The details of the prescription can be pre-populated based on local preferences, or you can manually choose the drug out of the patient's prescription history. Or third, you can enter the drug directly through the prescription screen, either under the single drug data entry or multiple search and select options. When using the patient portal, you can also enable the refill module for patients to directly send an alert to the physician or designee to approve refill requests for those drugs that are eligible. And then finally, you can generate the prescription based on the specific type, whether it's going to be a hard copy, faxed, or e-prescribed. So I've logged into PrognoCIS now as Connor, my medical assistant, and we're going to look at a couple of examples. Now, I mentioned we don't need an encounter to do a refill, so I'm not going to do a patient encounter search, but rather I'm going to go under the CPOE tab and choose refill. Now, this does invoke the standard name search, so we can search for our patient's name. I'm just going to go ahead and look up Jax Teller. Suppose that Jax has made a phone call. He doesn't need to see the doctor yet, but he does need some refills called in. This would be the most direct way of doing that. Now, in my case of Jax, since he's an existing patient, notice that my screen is already populated. From the top, I have my pharmacy chosen, and down here below, I've got the drugs showing, the Advocor and the Lisinopril. This is based on a system property. I currently have it set to show the details of the last prescription. That, of course, is based on your local preferences. Since this is the prescription Jax wants, all I need to do is click Save. And if I have the appropriate permissions under my user role, I can complete the prescription. And we'll see here that the message says Save and Approve Successful. So Connor does have permissions enabled. And now I can complete it. Since generic pharmacy is not an ERX pharmacy, my only option here would be to print it. And once it's completed, we see the check mark down here by the drug name. So the behavior of a refill is no different than that of a regular prescription. The only difference is that we created it outside of an encounter. Now, because everything in PrognoCIS does require an encounter, the system has auto-generated an encounter in the background with an encounter type of request refill. Provided the workflow is not broken, that refill request encounter will automatically close and you will never see it under your Open Encounter tab. So if I go back to my home page and look under our Open Encounters for today's date of service, notice I do not have an Open Encounter for Jax Teller. If I go to his encounter screen, however, notice I have a closed encounter for today's date and my encounter type says Request Refill. Now, during the course of completing that prescription, if I had gotten sidetracked and left the screen, maybe I got a phone call or had to go look at another patient's chart real quick, and then come back in to complete it, that would have interrupted my prescription refill, and this encounter would have stayed open, and then I would have to have closed it as I do any other encounter. Now, in this next example, we're going to look up our patient Christian Gray. Now, Christian is also an existing patient. But notice this time when his screen opens up, it is blank. We don't see anything pre-populating. And the reason for that is on Christian's last encounter, there was no prescription details to copy forward. Or that property that we just mentioned has been set to no so that the details are not set to auto-copy. In either event, I can access all of his previous prescriptions by clicking this button at the bottom. And then any qualifying prescriptions where this +RX option is enabled, I can go ahead and create a refill. So let's say he's here today for the Tylenol and the Lamictal. So I can just click that to add to my prescription and save it, and it is going to bring in those exact prescription details to my refill screen. So the first option we saw with Jax Teller was to have the screen pre-populated from the last encounter. In this example with Christian Gray, nothing pre-populated, but I was able to select the specific drugs out of his prescription history. Now, this third example we're going to look at is for a brand new patient who has never been at the practice before and has no prescription history. And that is our patient, Michaela Pratt. And since she is a new patient, the screen opens blank. As we discussed in the Creating a New Prescription video, you have the same workflow here. From top to bottom, you choose your pharmacy type, you enter your drug either one at a time, including its dispensable details, or come down here to the bottom where you can do your multiple search and select. Let's say Michaela doesn't have a preferred pharmacy. Let's say she just needs an antibiotic, so we'll quickly go ahead and write that prescription for the amoxicillin. So even though I'm creating a refill prescription, the system is creating it as if it is a brand new prescription, and I can go ahead and complete my prescription. Now, the last thing I want to mention is with regards to the patient portal. I've logged in here as our patient Jax, and I have a prescription tab, and notice it is listing all of Jack's available prescriptions that are applicable for refills. Now, this is controlled entirely at the practice level by settings configuration. If you don't want your patients to request refills this way, you can hide this function. But if you are going to allow it, the workflow is such that the patient simply clicks the checkbox for the drug that they want refilled and then click the request button. Back in PrognoCIS, and notice here the urgent alert has popped up in the doctor's face so that he can then approve the prescription. This property has various settings that you can define locally, whether you want it to go to the patient's primary physician, to the staff assigned to that physician, and so on. Now, more of that is covered in our patient portal module of videos. So in review, user permissions do apply when it comes to creating refills. This is different than your standard prescription permissions. Under the CPOE refill option, the patient name search is invoked. The patient does not require an existing encounter in order to do a refill. It does generate an automated encounter with an encounter type of refill request that will automatically self-close as long as the workflow is not interrupted. Prescription details can either pre-populate from the patient's last prescription based on local preferences and settings configuration, or you can select the drugs from the patient's prescription history, or third, as we saw with Michaela, you can manually enter the drugs either through the direct data entry, single drug at a time, or using the multi-search and select options. Patient Portal has an option of providing the refill request for patients if you choose to give them that feature. And then based on the prescription type, you can generate the completed prescription.